Good morning and welcome to our 10 minutes at 10 for everyone today. So today we are going to talk about effective credit control and the 7 steps that you can take to immediately improve your cash flow today.
Now, the main problem with cash is that you can be profitable on paper, but you could not have enough cash. So the lack of cash can easily cripple your business.
And we see that a lot, don't we? So businesses that look really good, that look strong on paper, that just can't pay their basic bills or pay their payroll.
Yeah. And according to ONS, 80% of UK companies fail in the first year, and only 44.1% survive the first 5 years.
Now that seems like a really high statistic to me. I'm not sure how.
I've heard others
that must
say
be just
1/3
limited.
fail, but it's within 10 years.
Yeah.
So I think actually, if you expand it to 10 years, it's about a third that succeed. Also, key one, ultimatefinance.co.uk, is that cash flow is responsible for up to 90% of company failures.
Now that I believe.
That one I definitely believe. Without a shadow of a doubt, I believe that one. And this is from Bax research, which shows that half of small businesses are actually being paid late.
Yeah, again, I believe that
I
too.
believe that.
So we see that in almost every client, don't we? So the biggest issues that we see for credit control are people not chasing cash. So they're either too afraid to chase cash because they don't want to offend their customers and they don't want to seem a bit cheeky. So they leave it a week, or they leave it another week, or they leave it another week, and maybe they'll pay, maybe they won't pay. And there's a huge reluctance, especially when you're quite on good terms with your customers. There's a great willingness to share work and to do work for the customer, but not so much in terms of chasing the customer for payment, which is a real oddity, I think, amongst UK small businesses. A lot of people say they have no time to chase debt, so it's one of these things that they'll do tomorrow and they put off and they put off and they put off, partly because they don't enjoy doing it, partly because they don't like the confrontation, and partly, I suspect, because their systems are not up to date enough. So they know a client owes them money, but because they haven't reconciled their bank, they don't know quite how much that is. And perhaps they remember somebody paying a part payment or a whole payment last week or the week before, but they haven't matched it against their accounts, so maybe their accounts aren't quite up to date. Either way, it's lots of excuses as to why they don't chase debt. So what happens is that the debt and the risk to your own company increases as you do more work for your customer and you get more into debt, you're more exposed, and yet they still don't pay.
If you remember, if you probably paid half the costs up front anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
In most businesses, that is the case. You've got wages to pay, you've got all of these costs. People just forget that.
Yeah. And if you've got a high cost business, you've perhaps got consumables or fuel or vehicles or this kind of thing. Cost of sales if you're building products. So the actual cost outlay is quite significant sometimes for some businesses, and a lot of those your suppliers are chasing you to pay, perhaps on 14 or 30-day terms. And if your customers aren't paying you for 45 or 60 days, it gets really, really uncomfortable. Now, what happens then if there's no systems in place to collect that debt? What happens is that the sales are made, the costs are incurred, there's wages to pay, there's tax to pay, there's VAT to pay, and you end up going in ever decreasing circles with a tighter and tighter and tighter cash flow.
Very, very stressful when that happens as well, because you get oodles of problem. Now, the ultimate outcome is that basically the business owner pays suppliers out of obligation, out of guilt, out of wanting to keep them on good terms. We've seen some businesses pay suppliers when, quite frankly, they don't have the cash to actually do so, but they find it from somewhere.
Or they put the money in themselves and they create a debt where they are paying their businesses' suppliers.
And this leads to 2 really big problems. They either fail to pay themselves, which
happens
of
a lot.
course is a really key part with small businesses and directors. The other one is they fail to pay HMRC, which can ultimately close the business. So really, really problematic in both of those scenarios, and often it leaves them very stressed, frustrated, and of course unhappy, which goes without saying.
Yeah.
It's not a nice position to be in.
So what we recommend, if you don't have time to implement a really robust credit control process, we do have a 7-step process that we think most businesses could afford to put in place, both in terms of time and effort. for themselves. So step one is to reconcile your bank receipts daily. Make it the first task of every day. You might not have time to worry about your payables. Don't worry about that. Just reconcile the receipts so that your customer accounts, your age receivables, are always up to date. You should always know exactly how much a customer owes you. Have a credit control meeting with yourself every Tuesday. So Mondays is too busy with a catch up. Tuesdays is the ideal day to do it. Now, it sounds silly, but if you have a bookkeeper or you have an accountant, have a cash flow meeting with them. If you're doing all your accounts yourself, have a cash flow meeting with yourself or a credit control meeting, book it out in your diary and actually spend time looking at your age receivables and creating an action list. So if you've got a credit control system in place, so if you're using an automated software, which you should be, then you should have some sort of auto invoice chaser. So Xero, for example, has a really handy chaser, and you can turn on about 5 or 6 chasers, or so it's 5, isn't it? One every week, and that will pick up the majority of people who just, they're going to pay you, they just haven't thought about it, or perhaps it's not there, it's not the week to do the payment run. So get your system to send out weekly persistent polite reminders just to keep you front of mind when they have cash in their business.
And you can't play the whole "I have no time" excuse, because it does it
automatically.
But it's really important to focus on step one. Make sure you have reconciled your banks.
Yeah.
Because if you have
otherwise
automation,
it just looks silly, doesn't it?
You look daft if you haven't. So you have to get step one in place for certain before you can do auto chasers.
Now there are 2 systems that we recommend. Both have their sort of pros and cons. One is Fluidly and one is Chaser. Both of them integrate with Xero, and I'm pretty sure they both integrate with QuickBooks. And it allows you to set up auto chasers for larger accounts, for people with multiple invoices. And so it sends them a weekly reminder and does the job for you. So if you don't like talking to your customers and asking them for money, then that is the right way for you. And it probably takes a couple of hours to set them up, doesn't it? Get them running. But it's better to have that set up and running, even if it's not perfect, even if the wording's not quite right in the chasers, than not have anything at all and don't pay them. So issue a statement to your late payers. So these are the naughty ones, the ones that aren't going to go, that aren't going to pay you. They're deliberate late payers, or they're people in cash crisis. They're people who persistently pay you late. So step 4 is to send them a statement. Step 5 is to get on the phone to them. Now, that sounds really uncomfortable, and it does mean you have to step out of your comfort zone a little. And we have had to, in the past, haven't we, stand over clients and say to them, right, ring this person because they owe you money. And it's a difficult, and it's uncomfortable, it makes you feel a bit awkward, but have a script ready so that you know what to say and you can ask them politely. You're chasing for money that they owe you. It's not rude or obnoxious to actually go out of your way to chase them. They haven't paid you, so they owe you that money. They weren't shy in asking you to do the work for them. Don't be shy in asking them to pay you for the work that you've done for them.
Just remember, if your suppliers do the same to you, why can't you do it to your customers?
Yeah. If you've got a supplier that you're particularly afraid of, or who's particularly insistent, think about the words that they use to make you pay their bills and use those words to make your customers pay your bills. Now, step 6 is to ask for a commitment to pay. So it may not be the whole debt that's outstanding that they are able to pay you, but at least if they made a part payment or a contribution towards it, it would ease your cash flow situation. It might be something particularly around that time or payroll time. You've got a motivation for getting that cash done, but try and get some sort of commitment out from your customer to get them to pay you on a particular date. Once you've got that commitment, log it in your system or log it in a notebook or a spreadsheet, whatever you use for your credit control, and then ring them when they don't pay. If they've promised to pay on a certain date, but they don't, ring them and follow up on that. The devil is in the detail of the follow-up, and if you don't follow up for someone who's promised to pay, and they know that they can keep fobbing you off by promising to pay but never do pay, they will keep doing it and they won't pay. And then finally, step 7, another quickie. This is one of the things that I think people are most afraid to do. If someone is not paying you for doing the work that you have already done, stop doing more work for them. Put them on hold. It doesn't matter how desperate they might be for your services, or you're going to put them in a difficult situation if you don't carry on the work. Put them on hold, make that uncomfortable for them so that they pay you. If you don't, the potential risk just increases and increases and increases, and again becomes more difficult, more uncomfortable, and puts you further and further out of pocket.
At the end of the day, they're not a good customer. They're not a good sale if they're not paying you.
No,
because all they're doing is they're increasing your debt. You're having to fund their work. You're basically paying for their work.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. And all that you're doing is you're extrapolating the problem. You're making it carry on longer. And then a bad debt is way more expensive than stopping it. You're not going to lose the contract just by putting it on hold necessarily. All you're going to do is you're going to force their hand to actually start paying down some of the older debt. It really is as simple as.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we see in a lot of clients' businesses where they have perhaps a long-standing relationship, or they feel obligated to a degree, don't they, to continue to trade with someone who's not paying. But at the end of the day, it's your money, and if you try and change your mindset so that you're thinking that your choice is do this extra job for your client who doesn't pay, or go and find another client who will pay you. Which of those is more expensive? Which it might be more difficult in the short term to get another client to replace the one who's not paying you. But if this one goes bust, or if this one fails to pay, if they don't pay anyway, you're kind of doing the work for free. Now, if you think about that as, that money, that cash that you could be receiving could be what buys your family's groceries that week. It could be what takes your kids to the movies at the weekend. If you try and attach an emotional motivation for collecting that cash and trying to convince your customer that that is your cash, not their cash, and it should be in your bank, not their bank, that will help you with your own credit control. So that's a whistle-stop tour today of our 7 steps to implementing credit control that works for your business today. So thank you for joining us. If you've enjoyed today's video, then please let us know. Please like or type in a replay in the comments if you're watching this on replay, so that we know you've seen it. And if you have any queries about that, please add them in the comments. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.